This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg1 and the good folks over at the Vegan Society. Veg1 is the multivitamin and mineral supplement designed by vegans for vegans. It was introduced back in 2005, updated in 2021 with an incredible new plastic-free package, and contains all of those key vitamins and minerals that everyone will tell you when you transition into a plant-based diet, into a vegan lifestyle, that you need to think about, and you absolutely do. So, what's in there? You've got B2, B6, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, and folic acid. So all of those kind of key ones you need to consider when you're starting out, or perhaps you've been here for some time. And it's all in a convenient once-a-day chewable form, which is super helpful, right? It's just £12.70 for 6 months worth, and they come in two amazing flavours. You've got orange and you've also got blackcurrant. Orange is a personal favourite of mine. I'm definitely team orange when it comes to Veg1. So if you'd like to know more and you're interested in picking up your 6 month supply, head over to thevegansociety.com, search for Veg1, and you can pick up some right there, delivered straight to your door. Enjoy the episode. Enjoy. What came first for you? Was it fashion, veganism as a passion point? Which one was the former?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been interested in fashion. I wouldn't describe myself as a fashionista or anything like that. So I guess, yeah, my path into vegan fashion was really my path into veganism, I think. And then I think, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but it was really just that I felt that this was a really big gap that was kind of underexplored and underserved. I mean, probably if there was something else, I might have kind of gone into something else, not fashion. But yeah, for me, the vegan fashion element was something that I thought needed a lot of attention. And yeah, that's why I ended up focusing on that, I think.
What was it that made you think it needed a lot of attention out of interest?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but so when I became vegan, I found the food side of it actually really easy. I mean, this was about 6.5 years ago, and I live in London. You know, there's lots of vegan food to be had everywhere, right? The supermarkets are full of it. So I didn't find that side hard, but one of the first things I started doing was thinking about, well, okay, I've got the food bit, but I know that there's a lot of non-vegan or animal exploitation rather that happens in fashions, in terms of leather, wool, silk. So I started looking for the most obvious thing, which was vegan shoes, and then vegan bags. And my first internet searches were just very dispiriting, really. I was finding stuff that was, very, very just sort of unfashiony, but, made out of horrible materials, really unstylish. Yeah. Just made me think, oh no, this is going to be really horrible and really hard. And then actually, I just thought this can't be right. So I started spending actually just a really long time digging into any brands I could find. I spent ages on Instagram, going down that kind of rabbit hole where, one thing takes you to another. And I basically found that there were actually lots of really lovely brands out there, but they were generally small and therefore, not amazing at marketing themselves and not very well exposed, certainly compared to kind of non-vegan alternatives. And so on the one hand, I was thinking, well, brilliant, that, there absolutely is some great stuff out there. And that's good, not just for me, but I didn't want anyone to be put off trying to choose more ethically and sustainably because they just thought it wasn't out there. But on the other side, I thought, how can I change that situation, essentially? So I started a blog on Instagram. This is while I was still working full-time, doing something else, really just with the sole aim of essentially sort of bringing together, curating and exposing the best of the vegan fashion that was out there. So I tried to make it very art-directed, I really focused on the aesthetics of it more than anything. I was just trying to sort of show people, you can love fashion, you can love really beautifully designed things and love engaging with beautiful, exciting brands. And you can do that and still be vegan and still be choosing vegan products as well. And I call that Immaculate Vegan. And that's kind of how it all sort of started, really, from an Instagram blog.
Did it gain traction pretty quickly, that notion? Did you have to kind of educate folks into that world, or did you just find there was actually this big audience who were kind of like thinking the same as you?
Yeah, it was a bit of both, to be honest. So I think on the one hand, I found that there were I got followers really quickly because I found that there were a lot of vegans out there who, like me, were kind of really frustrated by, people thinking, oh, just because you're vegan, you don't care about fashion, or it's just about choosing animal free, but it doesn't mean you also want really stylish things. So they were kind of like, oh, hallelujah, this is amazing. I had no idea these brands existed. So there was that on the one hand. The other, I think, side that's definitely needed educating, and that we still do, a lot of now, now that we're a sort of full e-commerce platform, is showing people who maybe aren't necessarily vegan but want to choose to shop more consciously just what vegan fashion is, and the materials that are out there. And I think particularly the misconceptions that are out there around, well, it's either, it's got to be plastic if it's not leather, or somehow it's less sustainable if it's not animal leather. They believe that animal leather is either sustainable or biodegradable, or a byproduct of the meat and dairy industry. So there are lots of myths that we definitely come across, and that we have to kind of keep educating people about. For sure.
Can I ask you about a specific myth?
Yeah,
you mentioned it there, but I don't want to don't want to test your product knowledge too much. So forgive me if I am. Forgive me if I'm overstretching, but I definitely had that perception that, and I won't name the brand, but there was a big high street brand, predominantly known for their women's fashion at quite a lower end, who had handbags and whatnot, and then suddenly they all had like the vegan trademark on, and I was like, well, you've taken what you had before. You had like a plastic bag, and you've stuck a logo on. It's like a greenwashing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I spoke to somebody from the Vegan Society about this recently, from the vegan trademark sort of department, and they said, well, no, it's not quite like that, because actually they do have to still. There was a process where they were like spraying them with like an animal product, and we had to get them to stop doing that. So it is actually changed. So I thought, oh, well, that's kind of good at least. But still, there is this element of, you've got that on one end, which is quite cheap. And then which is nothing wrong with that at all, but it's, it's one end. And then at the other end, you've got like Stella McCartney, which is incredible stuff, and like handbags and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, beautiful, but they're very, very expensive. Yeah. Is that the choice?
No, not at all. Not at all. So I think firstly, just going back to your kind of, can you just label something vegan if it's not leather? So no, you can't, because there are other non-vegan materials in sort of standard mainstream fashion lines, and that's something definitely to be aware of. So just because something, for example, is not leather, it might have animal based glue is really, really popular. It might have insect-based dyes. I mean, it's a minefield. So it doesn't mean it's definitely vegan. And I mean, we have brands that have also got the Vegan Society certification, and I know the hoops they've had to jump through to get that. So I do know that Vegan Society certification is really robust in terms of it being a vegan product, right? So no animal products in it. Yeah. However, that doesn't mean it's sustainable. So one of the materials that you see a lot in kind of fast fashion brands is PVC. So PVC is a plastic. But it's also very toxic plastic. So it produces a lot of chlorine when it's produced. It's horrible for the workers that are involved in it. So that we have a PVC free policy. So that is kind of the worst of the kind of vegan leathers. It's often referred to as pleather. It's that kind of really shiny, it doesn't feel nice, it doesn't look nice, but it's cheap. It's really cheap. And that's why it's used quite a lot. Now then you have, because the world of vegan leather is massive, and there are actually so many different types of vegan leather. Many of them do contain some level of a plastic that's called polyurethane. But even that, again, it's a very complex issue. So you can have polyurethane that's oil-based, you can have ones that are water-based. It can be produced to very sort of strict emission standards. And actually it can be very when you're comparing it to animal leather, which is often what it's being used to replace, is actually way more sustainable. And there are independent bodies that do this benchmarking, that look at the sustainability of fabrics used in fashion from cradle to grave. The sort of the very common one, or very reputable one that's used, is called the Higgs Index. And that shows that animal leather, out of all materials used in fashion, I think actually also Angora wool is one of them, they're the least sustainable fabrics. And nothing to do with animal welfare, just on sustainability, it's really bad. So things like where you've got PU or polyurethane that's in some vegan leathers, that is still better than animal leather from just a sustainability point of view. But then you get into the really exciting stuff, which is the plant-based leathers. And there are now leathers made of primarily, not 100%, because you need some other materials that give them a bit of structure and durability. But you get apple leather, you've got cactus leather, you've got grape leather, you've got mushroom leather, you've got Pinatex, which is made out of pineapple leaves. So there is a wealth of these amazing new, primarily plant-based materials. There's also, quite a few of our brands use a cereal-based leather, so it's made from bio-polyols from cereal crops. So there's all kinds of innovation taking place in this area. There's a lot of investment going into it, and we also find that it's something that our audience and sort of citizens of all kinds, shoppers of all kinds, are really interested in, because not only are these materials really sustainable, they often make use of waste products as well. So apple leather, for example, makes use of apple waste from the apple juicing industry, which is massive. But also they're just really exciting. They're very technology driven. They're really sexy. They like the whole idea of them. So there's many brands using those kind of materials now. We have bags, for example, from £50 to £500. So we're not on the Stella McCartney end at all in terms of price. I mean, that you're looking at £800 plus there for a new bag. Equally, we're not fast fashion. And I would say our sweet spot, like the most probably sold products, tend to be around £150 for shoes and bags. So they're not inexpensive by any means, but they are really high quality. They're made from sustainable materials, sustainable manufacturing, but also really importantly, we only work with brands that treat and pay their workers really fairly as well. And that is a crucial part of ethical consumption, right? Making sure that everyone in the supply chain is actually paid a living wage and treated well. Which again does not happen in fast fashion brands, unfortunately, or very rarely happens with fast fashion brands. So that's a long answer, but yeah, there's a lot of choice.
It's a great answer. I'm first of all just bowled over by your knowledge of this. I'm not surprised, but just it's incredible the depth and very reassuring. As a kind of consumer to know that there's that level of thought gone into things. Yeah. There's something on my mind though, which is if you'd said to me, like, I might have had the same thought process that you might have had at the beginning of this, as in, like, I've looked around, I can't find anything that's, what I would want to wear apart from unless it's kind of accidentally vegan. Yeah. So, that kind of market, that was probably where I was at. And anything that was in like a vegan range, I don't know, it just tended to not be the kind of thing I wanted to wear. But going from that to I'm going to tackle that problem myself is quite a leap. What was that kind of process? It might work as a leap for me. It might not have been for you. Yeah. I'm interested in your kind of like your journey into that. How did you get that kind of gap covered, if you like? Yeah,
I mean, I think it was lots of sort of fortuitous things I think happening at the same time, really. So on the one hand, I'd already started this Instagram blog, and that was something that I was just able to do while I was working. So it wasn't a huge amount of time. It was no kind of great sacrifice or anything. And that just really took off. So I had sort of the privilege of being able to see that kind of growing, and I was getting, people giving me really good feedback, but also brands contacting me saying, we love that you're featuring us. We really, we want a platform that shows us alongside brands that are like us, and also that really, focus on high quality design and creativity. So for them, it was really important to be in a kind of environment that showcased them, in the best way, and they felt that was really lacking. And as part of that was also somewhere that people could both discover and also buy these new brands. So I knew the demand was there anyway. I was also, we chatted about this before. You were saying about career, it's time for you for career change during COVID. Well, I had that a few years just before COVID, where I've been working all my kind of working life really in really large corporates. I was working in marketing. I was heading up the marketing for a big media company. And I'd kind of just sort of come to the end of that, really. So I was very ripe for a career change. And that sort of coincided with this taking off. And I basically just thought, why not just, do that? And I knew I could also do some consulting when I gave up my job, and that would kind of, pay the mortgage while I had time to develop this into an idea. But the other really fortuitous thing that happened to me was that my background is marketing, so I knew I had some of the skills to make this work, but I also knew there were a load of skills I didn't have. And one of them was I'd never, created and run an e-commerce site. But very luckily for me, a friend of mine put me in touch with someone who ran an e-commerce agency. who I met with, and I said, like, I've got this idea, and I really want to develop it, but I don't really know what's actually involved in creating the website and the costs and all of that. And he said, this guy was called Simon. He said, look, I think it's a brilliant idea. I also happen to be vegan. I'm looking for a new challenge. Why don't we do this together? And he became my co-founder, Simon. So I was very lucky in kind of finding him at the time, and we were able to do it together. And I think that's very important. I mean, I don't know, how much you might maybe hear that from other business owners, but I think having somebody else to do it with, complements and adds to your skills, your experience, but also just makes the whole thing a lot less scary. And it's very motivating as well. So that was a really big part of it. I think that was just luck, really.
Were brands kind of pretty open to you quite early? I mean, obviously you'd been working kind of alongside them anyway through the Instagram and the blog and so on. But so did that kind of give you a ready-made pool of contacts? Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that really helped because already I had a group of people to go to and say, look, we're now going to take this further. What do you think? Do you want to get on board? And they were really happy to. They already knew me. They kind of knew the kind of thing it would look like because they knew what the Instagram looked like. And so there was already a level of trust, I guess, there. And that, of course, once you've got the first tranche, then it's easier to go out and get other people because you can say, look, we've already got these guys signed up. Would you like to come on board as well? So all of that was massively helpful, I think. Yeah. So it was all it was a gradual process. It wasn't just I went from nothing to that. I think that would have been really hard and much scarier. But yeah, that really helped. I'm amazed by the logistics of it all as well, because there's brands all over the place that you've discovered, which is kind of incredible in the first place. Like brands I'd not heard of, and then thought, why have I not heard of this brand? Yeah. Like what they're doing is incredible, but they're all over the place. Like before we started recording, we were talking about a particular pair of trainers, which I'll show them. They're here. So for the video, which literally arrived at the time that we were just about to record, and I think they came from France. Yeah. They were shipped over from France, and of course when I saw that on the notification, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be a wait, with the Brexit and so on. But they turned up like 2 days, 3 days later or whatever.
France is actually pretty good. It's pretty good getting into it.
It's amazing. But it did make me think, like logistically, like how have you squared all of that? Because that's it's not quite as straightforward as like let's ship everything to one central place and sell it all in a shop, and if it's there, it's there, and if it's not, it's not. You've got to work with their kind of supply chains and so on. Talk to me about all of that. That's not even a question, that's amusing.
It's very interesting because somebody said, our web development agency actually said to us recently, like, you do realise you picked basically the most complex retail model you could have picked from an operational point of view. Not from our customers, it's great. They have access to all these amazing brands, they get them shipped directly to them, happy days for them. For us to manage is really complex. And it is. I have to say, I massively underestimated the operational work of running a business like ours. It is a lot. And it is complex, and we have to understand all kinds of things, from how shipping works to cross-border taxes, import taxes, like all kinds of really horrible things.
Yeah.
I mean, we really, really focus on UK brands and US brands, which makes it a bit simpler. And because those are where our two biggest audiences are by far.
Right.
But there are some amazing brands like the one you bought your trainers from, that are based outside of that. We have quite a few in France or Germany or Spain. Who just have really amazing products, and they just look great, and we know people really love them. And so we want to work with brands like that as well. So we do work hard to make sure that ultimately our job is to present our customers with the best vegan brands that are out there. And unfortunately, that doesn't always mean they're going to be based in the UK or based in the US. Because, at the moment, while there are more vegan brands launching all the time, which is brilliant, there still isn't as much choice as we'd ideally want, just to be able to buy locally, I think. Maybe one day that will come, because also it's obviously great buying locally because you often get free or low cost shipping, and obviously it's more sustainable. But I think right now, as a vegan, or buying vegan products, it's not always that easy. So yes, it is operationally quite tricky to run the business.
And there's a trade off with everything, isn't there? You get one aspect covered, like ethically. Either it's the people who are at the end of the kind of supply chain of it who are getting paid properly, or you get the right material, but then it has to come from such and such a place. So it's just a kind of a reality of the world until people like yourself almost are creating more of
Yeah.
this, more platforms for it, and so on. And then I guess it starts to become something that others might think, oh, do you know what? I might start that business. I've always wanted to start making trainers in Yorkshire or something, you know. Like, have you had much of that yet? I appreciate it's probably like that is a longer process, but have you had many kind of businesses who you've seen at the very, very early stages who are sort of wanting to talk to you?
Yes, actually, we really have in the last year or so, and that's been really exciting. I mean, our ultimate aim is, as a platform, we want to have a really strong collection of brands and products in every kind of category and in every region around the world. So we want people to, we want you, for example, as the UK consumers, to be able to go, right, I want, whether you want some new pants or some new trainers, or, some new skincare, whatever it is, to be able to buy that in the UK. And that would be great. But right now, that isn't the case in every category. But we are definitely seeing, we've had a few brands that have come to us saying, I'm just thinking about bringing out this new trainers brand. I'm based in Cardiff or wherever. Actually, this is what happened, was one of them. Because also, the other really exciting thing is we have a tradition in the UK of great shoemaking, but that's disappeared because we now don't have the factories anymore. And so there are people who are looking at both bringing back some of those industries, which is amazing, and also doing it ethically and sustainably. And they want to know from us, what are you seeing in terms of the market, what styles are doing well, where do you think the gaps are? And we love giving that information because that's exactly what we want. We want brands like that to launch and do all that good stuff, made in the UK, paying workers fairly. So I think that's definitely happening. The key thing I think is making sure they have access to funding, because that's often the hardest thing for a new business. Whether you're a business like us that's selling or whether you're manufacturing, you need access to funding to be able to turn your idea into a reality. So I hope they're able to get the funding. But there are definitely people out there with definitely, passionate ideas about what they want to produce and doing it locally, yeah.
This is a bit of a crystal ball thought stroke question, so forgive me asking you to predict the future, but and I'm not, not particularly a fan of Brexit in many ways. But I just wonder, just as you were saying that there, do you think a consequence of Brexit in the longer term may be that folks in the UK who are looking to start these businesses feel more buoyed to do so? Perhaps we see more of that for whatever reason. Do you think we will see industry kind of turning inward a little bit more?
Yes, I think so. I don't know if it's a consequence of Brexit necessarily. All I see is all the nightmares.
Yeah, me too. Just to put my cards on the table.
It'd be lovely if that's a silver lining. I kind of feel that would be happening independent of Brexit, and the reason I think that is because I think the drivers behind that is actually, I think it's a bigger drive that's happening in lots of places, or certainly lots of developed economies around the world, around local purchasing, local sourcing. That's really around the demand, I think, for increased sustainability and ethics. I think it's more around that, for example. Right. So we have one of our best-selling bag brands. They're called Frida Rome, and they use cactus leather. Cactus leather is made in Mexico, but everything else they do in the UK. So they hand make their bags in Manchester. The really skilled workers who are being paid and treated really well. They're part of the family. That kind of model, I think, is becoming really popular, but not just in the UK. We see it in Spain and Germany and Italy with the brands that manufacture there as well. And I think it's just this recognition that people want, slow fashion that's made well, that's made to last, that's made by people that are skilled and care about the product and are themselves treated well and, and equitably. And I think it's the growth of that more than anything, I think. And the UK is seeing that as well.
This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg One from the Vegan Society. Veg One is the nutritional vitamin and mineral supplement designed for vegans by vegans. Launched back in 2005 and rebranded in 2021 with a fantastic new plastic-free package, Veg One provides nutritional support alongside a healthy and balanced vegan diet, all for an affordable price. With a 6-month supply available for just £12.70, Veg One will cost you little over £2 a month and offers EU nutrient reference values, or NRVs, of vitamin B12, D3, iodine, selenium, B2, B6 and folic acid. Veg One is chewable, it's affordable and reliable, you can take it once a day, it's available in fantastic orange and blackcurrant flavours, super easy and convenient, completely plastic free. So why not head over to vegansociety.com, search for Veg One, and take your next healthy steps into the world of veganism.
From a marketing point of view, is that one of the biggest challenges for you insofar as my thought process here is that the sustainable message and the vegan message, obviously they kind of have gone hand in hand for some time.
Yeah.
However, there is also this kind of like challenge, I think, around the quality message. We did talk a little bit about this kind of earlier, but I just want to talk about it more squarely from a marketing point of view, from your point of view, in overcoming the objections from perhaps the non-vegan crowd.
Yeah.
You're looking for something sustainable, but you also want luxury, and you have that kind of like to and fro going on in your mind. Is that one of your biggest challenges, to help people overcome those things and help them see that a cactus leather, a pineapple leather, an apple leather, whatever it is, that's modern luxury?
Yeah. I think it is, to some extent. I mean, part of the challenge is that a lot of people have never seen, or they've never felt these materials. They don't know what they feel like. You can obviously show them pictures, but everyone knows what animal leather looks like and feels like. So I think part of that is just the exposure. If you've never seen it before, you don't necessarily know that it's going to feel really beautiful or, look really beautiful in the flesh, as it were. So that I think is part of the challenge. Yeah. I think, animal leather has had thousands of years to kind of build, for its marketing campaign, hasn't it? In terms of being seen as the most luxurious material. I think that's changing now. I think the truth about it is coming out. We do quite a lot of, we have a lot of content on this. We just recently published one on the leather industry's greenwashing debunked, which talks a lot about some of those things around, particularly the idea that it's biodegradable. It's not. If it was biodegradable, in animal skin, it's biodegradable, but it would rot on your feet. It has to go through a tanning process, which is adding where you add loads and loads of chemicals to it, and that's what makes it non-biodegradable, i.e. it lasts. So if you've got something durable, it's very hard for it to be biodegradable at the same time. But again, there are lots of these, big myths out there around that, or that it's a byproduct, that's another thing, and it's therefore sustainable in some way. So yeah, we definitely have to do a lot of work in encountering those. But on the other hand, as I said, I think because some of the fruit-based leathers and the sort of the plant-based leathers are seen as quite sexy and innovative, that's helping to position them within the luxury market as well. And then it does really help that you've got brands like Karl Lagerfeld and Stella McCartney and Hermes that are starting to use them as well. Although Hermes did a mushroom leather and calfskin bag, which is a bit odd. I don't know who they thought that was for, but and anyway, at least they're using mushroom leather. Karl Lagerfeld is using cactus leather. So the fact that when people see luxury brands are using them, I think it automatically gives them oh, okay, they must be good quality then, right? They must be a certain level. Yeah.
I mean, this sort of thought question doesn't necessarily apply to Immaculate Vegan, because you obviously have brands who are much more holistically sort of ethical and vegan and so on. But I have a thought on that, or a question on that, really, that I'd just like to pick your brains on. You mentioned there, big kind of fashion houses who are using, turning to vegan leather products and so on and so forth, but simultaneously, if you use Hermes as an example, simultaneously opening up a crocodile farm in one place and then selling mushroom leather in another. There was a really big I won't say the name because I can't remember it. It's between two, and I can't remember which one. You'll probably know exactly which one it was. Actually, I know exactly which one it was now. It was Mulberry. I'm going to say it. But a while back, Mulberry did a handbag, and I saw it everywhere. It was kind of like, Mulberry does their first sustainable handbag. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let's read up on it. And I read up on it, and it was like a calf skin. So in there, it was like, bovine leather, and I was kind of like, hold on a minute, like, you've instantly lost that there. So there's like a greenwash marketing thing there. In your view, like, is there a genuine, from what you've seen, and I appreciate you're dealing with more ethical brands, from what you've seen, is there a genuine desire to shift towards these things, or are some of these big businesses, in your view, actually just seeing it as there's a market over there that we can have a bit of? So we'll have that alongside our. I ask because I sometimes see in the sort of quote unquote vegan community, the vegan media, etc., these things being held up as progress. This company's done this, isn't it great? and then somebody else pointing out, you see the comments underneath and everyone's like, yeah, but what about this, and this, and this. So I just wanted to get your view on it. Sorry for the rambling question.
To go where the vegan dollar is. I think it's both, honestly. So, and we've been having chats with some kind of bigger brands that want to sell on us and have vegan collections. And what we see is, I think there are definitely brands that are doing this because they see that the consumer demand is there. And they want to be part of that, right? So that might be Hermes or Karl Lagerfeld or whoever. But these brands that are clearly doing lots of awful things as well. You sort of think, well, they can't, they can't be that unhappy with the status quo if they're still doing mainly that. So I think there's definitely, so the good thing is that consumer demand is going in this area, and if people are seeing it, brilliant, because it means actually things are changing. On the other hand, some of the people that I've spoken to have made it really clear to me that within some of those big brands, while there might be a lot of people that are just, only care about making money, there are also some really passionate people that really care about trying to change the way the industry is, and they want to do that from within. And that's why I think there's both. And ultimately, I don't think we're going to get the change we want unless we see big brands changing. So while I obviously want to massively support all the small, amazing brands that we have, I really want the big brands to change as well, because in the same way that I want all the big food brands to have more vegan collections, I want McDonald's to have a vegan collection, because until you do that, you're not going to change the way the majority of people eat or the way the majority of people shop. And so you're not really going to change, life for animals and people and, the impact on the planet, which is what we all want, right? So I'm all for that kind of happening. Having said that, I almost, in a way, I don't care what the intention is. I care what they're doing. And so I would go back to just looking at what are they actually doing. If they're producing things from vegan materials, brilliant. But are they being manufactured in a sustainable way? So, for example, are they using factories that use closed-loop technology where everything's recycled? Are they making sure that there are no toxins being released into the atmosphere? Are they using solar energy? Do they have carbon neutral, carbon positive kind of practices? The answer to that in most cases is going to be no. What's their ethical labour policy? Do they understand what their whole supply chain looks like, and are they making sure that everyone's being treated and paid fairly? In most cases, even for luxury brands, it's a big no. And are they using sustainable packaging? So we try and look at all those different elements, make sure that our brands are doing all of those. If big brands are doing all of those things, I'm like, I don't even care what the reason is. I just think they're doing it, but I also know they're not doing it, and that's when you can sort of see what the intention is. If the intention is really just to try and go after the vegan marketing or the vegan dollar, then they're just doing the most obvious stuff, which is look at the material, it's vegan, and they're not doing anything about the rest of it. And I think as consumers, that's what we should all be asking those big brands to do. It's like the fashion revolution campaign, which is who made my clothes. That's so important. So, asking big brands, or even saying, I love the fact that you've done that, but what about this? And I'm not going to get behind you until you deal with all of this stuff. That's really powerful.
Yeah. I think folks find it incredibly difficult to get beyond the sort of PR speak of these companies. I've looked on loads of these websites when I've seen one of these vegan ranges, and I've read something and I thought, that sounds quite good, and then you get to a line and you think, that I don't really know what that means. It's almost like deliberately obfuscating.
There's a lot of greenwashing, and particularly around this has been sort of publicised recently by campaigns like the Clean Clothes campaign and Labour Behind the Label, and people like that really look at ethical labour. And a lot of these brands are talking about their vegan collections and about empowering women, and yet they're not paying their female workers who are based in Bangladesh or Pakistan, even a living wage, or they're not paying for items that were made during COVID that they no longer want. So there's this massive discrepancy between what they're saying and their marketing spin and what they're actually doing, and that's why it makes it really hard, doesn't it, as consumers? You have to constantly be questioning stuff. You can't just walk past a nice billboard and go, oh, that's great, they're doing some really great things. You have to kind of go, but what are they doing here, and who's making it? And just because it's made of cactus leather, does that really mean it's ethical? Is there somebody else that's doing it more ethically? So it does put more responsibility on us as consumers, I think, to question. But I think we have to, if we don't want to be duped, and we want to make sure we're making the best choices.
Or at least, I suppose one of the beauties of having something like Immaculate Vegan is that you have an element of trust in, they've done that work for me.
We have done that work for you. I mean, that's one thing you can do. I mean, you don't only have to talk to us, but exactly, go to people that have done that work. I mean, there are other multi-brand retailers that that do look at things around sustainability and ethics as well. And one thing I would say is there are also lots of people that label themselves sustainable retailers, and yet they sell wool and silk and leather mainly. They call it ethical leather. For me, that's not sustainable. It certainly isn't ethical. So I guess there's that to kind of be wary of as well. But as long as you find a retailer that you feel matches your values, then that's a good shortcut to then kind of going, okay, well, at least they've done that work and they're bringing me brands that I know have been vetted already.
What is that vetting process even how does it even begin? Was it like for you folks?
Yeah, I mean, so we tend to look at 4 areas. We look at materials, and obviously they have to be vegan, but also sustainable. We look at manufacturing, we look at labour, and we look at packaging. And they're the kind of 4 areas that we really drill brands on. The really, in a way, what makes it easier for us is because we do tend to work with independent, smaller brands. They know their supply chains really, really well. They're not very big.
Right.
So it's easy for them to trace everything. They know exactly who's making their products because it's a studio down the road from them, and they know their workers. Or some of the bigger ones who do have bigger factories, but they visit those factories regularly. So again, they can see everything that's happening on the shop floor. Whereas really big high street brands just don't have that. They've got such complicated, vast supply chains. They don't even necessarily know what's happening in all of them. So often it's not even a case that they are they don't want to do better things. It's just very hard for them to get the transparency or to invest enough work anyway in getting that transparency. So for our brands, it's much easier. And often you can tell how genuine a brand is by just how open and transparent they are about talking to you. So again, with us, I can kind of, I've now, having talked to so many brands, I can kind of quite instantly see where they're kind of kosher because they just talk so effortlessly and they're passionate about who's making their products, what they're made from. They talk to they're in direct contact and have relationships with suppliers of all their materials. They've tried them all out. They've been comparing the relative sustainability of all these different vegan leathers against each other and what's better and what's stronger and all that kind of stuff. So they just have so much first-hand knowledge of what's happening. And that then is very easy for us to see as well. And that is, I think, the challenge that really big high street brands have about getting that transparency and closeness to everything that's happening.
Is it, from what you've seen, is it even possible, and this might be a naive question, it probably is, so forgive it, but is it even possible to scale and stay ethical?
I mean, I guess, well, it sort of depends in a way what you mean by ethical, doesn't it, and sustainable, because it's not.
Yeah, true.
They're sort of, one person's ethics might be, like somebody might think, you can have ethical leather. I don't, but so it kind of depends on, I think, your definitions. I think in general, yes, I think it's harder. It's harder the further away you come from your supply chain as a brand to know what's happening. I mean, one other area that's definitely an issue now is with the vegan leathers is actually around supply, because a lot of these businesses just can't keep up with the demand. And so as soon as they get one really massive client, let's say a car brand wants to use, one of their vegan leathers for the interior of their cars, and it's a big brand, that's wiped out the supply. So a challenge for a lot of those kind of the materials companies is actually for them to scale quickly enough to be able to meet the supply demand. And so that's another issue. I mean, another issue is around, factories. So, I'm aware of factories in India and China, for example, that are actually done on a really sustainable model. But one challenge they have is if they want to grow, do they just grow the factory size, which then it becomes much harder to make sure that all those really strict policies they have around ethical labour in place. And instead they're choosing to not do that. They believe you should only get to a certain size for it to feel like a community and a family still. And actually what they're doing instead is just opening a different factory somewhere else. But they really want to keep that smaller community family feel because that's really important. So there are things that you can, I think, do to get around it, but it's definitely it's a challenge. And I think, I don't think you can necessarily adopt the things that really big, fast or traditional fashion brands have done and doing that in the same way, because that will bring real challenges into that. Making sure that things are as good as they can be, at least.
How's COVID impacted things over at Immaculate Vegan? Has it been particularly challenging for you, like it has for most?
No, not really well. Yes and no. I mean, I think initially, certainly, we were hit in general, like everyone was, by just there was a huge amount of uncertainty. And so for a time, it was just people stopped buying anything. But quite quickly that ended for us. And I think the really positive side of it has been that it's just shone an even stronger light on the relationship between, what we do, what we buy, and what happens in our environment. One of the, I guess, lessons behind COVID is just that, if we damage our environment, if we have processes and practices in place that mean there's a very strong link between, wild animals and farmed animals, for example, that creates the ideal breeding ground, or wild animals and people. It creates an ideal breeding ground for diseases, for example, or pathogens. So there's been a lot of, I think, exposure around that. Obviously, the climate crisis, I think, has had a big light shone on it as well, even more so. All of that has really helped us because ultimately it means that we're seeing more people who are interested in moving away from the status quo and shopping more ethically and sustainably. So that's been that's been a big silver lining, I think, with COVID for us, and hopefully that will still continue now that maybe COVID isn't such a horrendous issue as it was earlier.
I really hope so. I always worry with that it felt like there was a lot of reflection going on at the beginning, and pausing and thinking and connections being made, certainly in the circles that I was perhaps moving in. So maybe it was a bit of an echo chamber. I'm not sure, but I'm always conscious of what I could label as progress. But I do see that sort of waning a little bit with excitement to get back to normal life. So I kind of hope that we do hang on to some of that. I really do.
I think with the climate crisis, I think that's the side that I think pretty much no one now, apart from maybe a few crazies in the world, can deny there's something serious going on with climate change, right? And the reality is that we're seeing it. We're seeing it all the time. We're seeing it in terms of extreme weather effects that are now no longer rare. Unfortunately, some parts of the world are suffering from that, a lot more than others. So I think it's just becoming more and more present, and that hopefully will mean there's increased urgency that doesn't go away around this, I think.
Do you know what we haven't actually talked about, which is completely my fault. So we're very excited about talking about fashion and Immaculate Vegan and so on. But it's your actual personal journey into the world of veganism. What started you off?
My dog. My dog started. So I think about 10 years ago now, I got a rescue greyhound. And that was my first sort of animal that I'd had as an adult. I'd sort of grown up with pets, but hadn't had a pet as an adult at all. And I mean, I don't know if you've come across greyhounds at all, but they're very sensitive. They're quite vulnerable dogs, right? They've had a horrendous time in the racing industry. So they come to you very sensitive. I mean, they're the most amazing dog, by the way. Anyone who wants a dog, get a greyhound. They're incredibly affectionate. They're great. Just great pets. But you're very aware of just how vulnerable they are and what's going to happen to them. And that, for me, just somehow there was a bit of a light bulb moment, I think, where I love my dog so much, and I would have hated for anyone to harm her or to do anything to her. And she just made me realise that, well, if I felt that way about her, she's just the same as all animals, and I'd feel the same way about a cow or a goat or a pig or a chicken if I'd had that contact with them. And so that for me was a light bulb moment that made me think, if I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her, how on earth could I therefore do things that would harm animals in the same way when I know they're, sentient beings that are capable of joy and capable of suffering and all that kind of stuff. So that made me go vegetarian. And then I think that for me was very much the gateway to veganism, because I think like a lot of people do this as well, which is when you're part of the problem, you don't want to inform yourself about it because no one wants to feel bad about the decisions they're making every day, Whereas as soon as I wasn't part of the problem, I was part of, what I saw was a problem, which was eating meat anyway. I was able to look at the videos and, all the footage that was out there about actually what happened in the dairy industry, which I don't think I'd have let myself look at before. And it was, it's out there for anyone who wants to know it. It's easy to see, isn't it? But you just don't want to because it is so horrific. Yeah. And then once I saw that, then it was kind of like, oh my God, I can't, how can I be part of this? I absolutely can't. So then it was a kind of much easier transition. And then I pretty much went, I would say go vegan overnight, but actually I think I'd already given up. I'd swapped out milks and I'd swapped out yogurt and things like that. So it was just kind of cheese and eggs at that point. And that didn't feel like a big deal then at all. That's my journey. I've never looked back.
Did everyone in your circle go with you? What did people that were close to you make of it?
Well, yeah. Actually, my mum, who's in her 80s, is now almost vegan. So I'm very, very proud of her. That's amazing. And she's seen amazing benefits, like her arthritis is almost gone and she feels much, much better. So that's very, very exciting. I've definitely had friends, and actually I've got a cousin that's gone vegan. So maybe I was a bit of an influence there. I live with a non-vegan. So my partner eats meat and dairy and everything. And So no, unfortunately, I'm still surrounded by some non-vegans as well.
How's living with non-vegans? I've not done it for a long time.
It's quite hard.
I hope these might be listening.
You have to just really try very hard not to. You have to not get into the preachy thing at all, right? Because that just makes people want to run a million miles and do the opposite. Which, as a brand, Immaculate Vegan, that is very much one of our values. We firmly believe that to get people over to vegan fashion, it's about being 100% non-preachy, just giving people information, but most importantly, just giving them amazing alternatives they want to swap. And I find that really easy from a work perspective. From a sort of personal perspective, it's much harder.
Yeah.
Watching somebody, make a bacon sandwich, and you're like, oh. Oh no.
I'll ask you for a bit of that advice, actually, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Just about from a as you know, as somebody with massive marketing experience, and also somebody who's a founder of an incredible brand like Immaculate Vegan, who manages to strike the balance in the tone in which you present information without it coming across preachy. Like, what are the key sort of tenets to being able to do that? I personally find that quite difficult to toe that line.
I mean, I think fundamentally for me, the reason I believe that is I think it's just grounded in, certainly my understanding, which I think I've developed as a marketeer and just somebody that's interested in this, in how we make decisions and how our brains work, right? We've evolved essentially to, one, not to really take risks or to make changes as often as we can, because, the well-trodden path is the safe path. So I think if you're trying to get somebody to change their behaviour in any kind of way, whether that's changing the brand they use, which often that's a key job of marketeers the world over, or getting people to look at ethical and sustainable alternatives, what you have to remember is that intrinsically we are going to underestimate the benefits of changing and overestimate the risks, and that's just what our brains do. So what we have to do is we have to sort of then counter that bias with the opposite. We have to underplay the risks, i.e., it's so easy, it's not difficult, you're going to have no problems, so making it look as easy as it can. And that's whether you're trying to get people to try vegan food or vegan bags or whatever it is. And then I think, really amplifying the positives. And so I think that kind of knowledge of, well, this is just human behavior, this is just how brains work, helps us when we think about what's our strategy, right? So again, what we do is we absolutely give people information, but we try and do that in a very, not an unemotive or certainly a non-judgment way, right? There is this problem, not you're the problem. But also what we really highlight more than anything is, here's the solution. You can be part of it. It's actually really easy. It's really enjoyable. Look at this amazing stuff. Doesn't it look gorgeous? And really amplify that. And that, I think, is the most effective way, I think, of getting people to change. I mean, this is not, nothing against. There are lots of amazing activists that do amazing work at talking about the problem. And I think you need that as well. But you also do need people that really focus on the positive side of changing, because that ultimately, I think, has a stronger effect on people.
Yeah, sort of vegans in every area being vegans, doing their thing, I think is much needed. Like if we sort of marginalise ourselves, we can't really expect it to grow.
No, I mean, you're gonna change if you see people that you think are like you, that you empathise with, doing what you're asking them to do. And therefore, I think that's it. We can't, if we appear like people that are different to everyone else, or pure in some way, or better, that's a massive turn off. We've all seen those kind of stereotypes, haven't we, of vegans that just go on about being vegan all the time, and how evil you are if you have a bacon sandwich or whatever it is. And as tempting as it is to do that, and I know it's really hard. I think it doesn't work. It really it's not very effective anyway in general. Or certainly not as a solitary tactic. It's not very effective.
And I think in the modern world, to your point about, when you're walking down the high street, you've got to think about the decisions that you're making. It's very difficult to to not be in a glass house of some description. You know, even if you are vegan, even if you are, thinking you're doing everything, there's something that someone can point at. So it's difficult to take that position.
Very, and most of us, the vast majority of us, were non-vegan for a very, very long time, and we weren't non-vegan because we had no knowledge, or that knowledge wasn't there to be found. I mean, for me, certainly, I know it was. I just, for some reason, that sometimes even incomprehensible to me, I chose not to. And so, just because I'm the other side of that doesn't mean I shouldn't have. That for me is the link to empathy, right? You know it yourself, so you should have empathy with who you were. And therefore that should allow you to have empathy with all those other people out there that are, many of which are very, very good people and want to do good things most of the time, but for some reason just find it hard to make that switch.
The point you make about, our brains are almost kind of wired to not look for the kind of change in things sometimes, and to if we kind of deep down know we're doing something that's not right, to not look into it. It takes me back to like when I used to smoke, and there was all the information was out there, been out there for a long time. And I purposefully chose not to look at those. I mean, even to the point, I remember when they first put the pictures on the cigarette packets and the lettering, and sort of just almost purposefully avoiding it.
Or even if it's right in front of you, right? I mean, if somebody told me not to smoke, or why it was, somebody told me why it was bad for me, all it would make me want to do was to smoke even more vociferously, because there's that as well, isn't there? You don't like being told you shouldn't do something. Yeah,
especially not if it's if there's an ethical judgment to it. I think us as humans really struggle with that concept when somebody tells us we are ethically making a poor decision. It really strikes at our core, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, I mean, no one wants to feel that they are a bad person. No one wants to feel they're making bad decisions, and that's why I think it's much more generally effective to talk about the problem that's there rather than it being with the person. When we talk about, the leather industry and what effect that has, we don't say, you as a consumer are doing this, because that just feels like an attack, and people's natural instinct when they feel like they're being attacked is to either attack back or to walk away. But it's not to engage, right? That's the thing. Is that, that is the last instinct if you're being attacked, to try and engage with an open mind. And that's what we want people to do. We want people to engage with an open mind. So you kind of have to think, what can I do that's going to have the highest chance of somebody engaging with me with an open mind?
Love that. I can't think of a better place to start to wrap up. But I really do appreciate your time, Annick. It's been amazing chatting with you. I've learned a lot, and feel super excited to get shopping on Immaculate Vegan.
You're lovely trainers.
I'll do some more shopping.
You chose very well.
Thank you. They're not far off bloody Vegan's colours as well. So there you go. Which is wonderful. But it would be remiss of us not to tell folks where to go about finding Immaculate Vegan. So whereabouts would folks find you?
So we are immaculatevegan.com. That's our website. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and YouTube at Immaculate Vegan, all one word.
Awesome stuff. Well, there'll be links in all the show notes, so do head to the show notes, and you can find all of those things that Annick just mentioned.
And if you sign up to our newsletter, you get 10% off as well.
There you go. Look at that. Bonus. Well, we'll definitely put that in the show notes as well. I like saving people some money too. So thanks so much, Annick. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure too. Cheers.